When you think apocalypse, what comes to mind? Probably just chaos, right? One big, messy, disastrous event. But what if it's not random at all? What if in the book of Revelation, it's all laid out like a terrifying three-act play? A countdown where each stage gets way more intense than the last. So let's break down that script. So, what if all that end of the world chaos actually has a script? Well, the source material suggests it does. We're talking about a sequence of 21 specific judgments, and they don't just happen one after another. They build up like this terrifying crescendo. Okay, so the basic idea is pretty straightforward. You've got three sets of judgments, and each set has 7 parts. Easy enough. But here's the kicker. They're not just lined up like dominoes. They're actually nested inside each other. And with each new set, things get way, way worse. So this is the roadmap right here. It all kicks off with the opening of 7 seals. That's the first wave. But the 7th seal, that one's different. It doesn't bring another disaster. Instead, it literally opens up the next act, the 7 trumpets. And you guessed it, that pattern continues. The 7th trumpet then unleashes the grand finale, the 7 bowls of God's wrath. So let's dive in at the very beginning with the seals. All right, so this is Act 1, the beginning of the end. Opening these 7 seals kicks off the whole end time scenario. And this first wave of judgments, well, some of this might sound pretty familiar. So the whole thing starts with this scroll, right? And it's sealed shut with 7 seals. Every time one of those seals is broken, a new judgment is unleashed on the world. Now, these first 4 seals, you've definitely heard of these. They're the famous 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. They bring a conqueror who looks like a savior, then all-out war, followed by a famine so bad it devastates the economy, and finally, plagues that wipe out a huge chunk of the population. It's a brutal opening act. So after the horsemen ride out, the 5th seal is opened, and this one's different. It shows the souls of martyrs, people who died for their faith, and they're crying out for justice. But then, the 6th seal. This is where the scale just explodes. The judgment isn't just on humanity anymore, it hits the cosmos. The text describes this insane earthquake, the sun going dark, the moon turning blood red, even the stars falling from the sky. It's like the laws of physics are just breaking. The terror on Earth is just unimaginable. So much so that people are literally begging for the mountains to fall on them, just to hide. And what's really key here is that they know this isn't just a random natural disaster. They see it for what it is, the wrath of God. And there is absolutely nothing they can do about it. Okay, and this is a super important detail. The 7th seal isn't another plague or earthquake. Think of it more like a gateway. When that seal is broken, the text says there's silence in heaven. It's the calm before a much, much bigger storm. Because inside that 7th seal is the entire next series of judgments, the 7 trumpets. So let's get into Act 2, the 7 trumpets. If you thought the seals were bad, well, the trumpets take it to a whole new level. This is a direct assault on the planet itself. The destruction gets way more specific and way more severe. And this time, each judgment is announced by the blast of a trumpet, sounded by an angel. The first 4 trumpets are all about ecological collapse, absolute catastrophe. I mean, look at this. 1/3 of all plant life burned up. 1/3 of all sea life dead. 1/3 of the fresh water poisoned. And then 1/3 of the light from the sun, moon, and stars is just gone. The planet is being systematically dismantled, piece by piece. And just when you think it can't get worse, the judgments turn supernatural. And believe me, they get way more horrific. The 5th trumpet releases these, well, they're described as demonic locusts. They don't kill people, but they torture them for 5 straight months. Then the 6th trumpet unleashes this demonic army that kills another 1/3 of humanity. Just think about that number for a second. This right here is a perfect example of that escalation we've been talking about. It's a little preview of what's to come. See, under the trumpets, 1/3 of the sea life dies. That's awful, right? But just wait. When we get to the bowls, that partial judgment becomes total. And that brings us to the final act, the grand finale. Remember the pattern? The 7th seal contained the trumpets. Well, the 7th trumpet contains the 7 bowls, and these are described as God's final, pure, uncut wrath. No more warnings. This is it. The final 7 judgments. And these are different. They're fast, they're global, and they are absolutely devastating. Okay, So the first bowl kicks off with these awful, painful sores that break out on anyone who followed the Antichrist. Then that escalation we saw earlier hits like a ton of bricks. The second bowl is poured out, and every single living thing in the sea dies. Not a third, everything. The third bowl turns all fresh water, rivers, springs, into blood. And the fourth, the sun's heat gets cranked up so high it scorches people with fire. Yeah, the time for partial judgments is long gone. Next up, the fifth bowl plunges the Antichrist's entire kingdom into total darkness, and the sores from the first bowl get even worse. The sixth bowl sets the stage for the final epic showdown, the Battle of Armageddon. And the seventh and final bowl, it unleashes the most powerful earthquake in all of human history. Entire cities are leveled. And then, hailstones that weigh about 100 pounds each start falling from the sky. This is the absolute cataclysmic end. And here we go again, another perfect example of this insane escalation. Remember with the trumpets, the sun's light was just reduced by a third, it got darker. But with the bowls, the sun becomes a literal weapon, scorching people, and then it's followed by this deep, painful darkness. The intensity is just cranked all the way up. So, after hearing about all this destruction, you have to ask, right? Why? What's the point of all this? And the source material actually gives a very specific theological reason for why this all has to happen. All 21 of these judgments, the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls, they're all part of one big event, which the text calls the great day of their wrath. And its purpose is pretty clear. It's the final judgment on the wickedness of the world, aimed squarely at the kingdom of the Antichrist. And here's the justification we get from inside the narrative itself. They're not presented as just random, cruel acts. They're framed as a just and righteous response to evil. It's described as payback, specifically because, as the text says, the world had shed the blood of saints and prophets. So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that these aren't just 21 disconnected disasters. They're all part of a single, connected story. It's a terrifying, incredibly structured narrative that escalates from partial warnings all the way up to complete and final destruction. And that really leaves us with one last big question. When you have a text that lays out such a detailed, specific roadmap for the future, what does that do to people? Whether you take it literally or as a metaphor, how does a script for the end of the world actually shape how people believe and what they do right here and now?